Alright, we are back. Talking a little bit more about Russian and also the rest of Europe, but their politics towards the latter part of the 19th century. Talking about changes in science and technology as well, and how those are starting to affect society. So, start off with Austria and the idea of the Ausgleich. The Russian Tsars Alexander II and Alexander III. Queen Victoria of England. The British Reform Act of 1867. Canadian Dominion. John Macdonald. Karl Marx, Charles Darwin, Thomas Edison, Alexander Graham Bell. Look at aeronautics with Wilbur and Orville Wright, the Wright brothers, Robert Goddard. Look at the German politics in the latter part of the century, the rise of the Social Democratic Party, and Wilhelm II as the Kaiser, 1880-1980. Now, questions on those? Okay, go to page 684 in the book. Brightly colored areas, that little patchwork of explosion of colors on the page, is the Austrian Empire. 684, yes. So, the Austrian Empire in 1867. Looking at breaking it down by ethnic group. What you're seeing here, the brighter colors, those are where those groups are in the majority. It's not counting all the little minority groups that don't even have a majority in some particular area. And remember, the thing about Austria is it's controlled by a small group of Germans. They make up about a third of the population. They make up the royal family, but all this little patchwork group of peoples, they are under their control. And they don't want to be under their control. The Hungarians are the next largest group. It's Poles, Croats, Czechs, Serbs, Italians, Romanians, Slovaks, and many, many others. Well, Austria had tried for a very long time to be the dominant power of the Germanic Confederation and of the Germans in general, but their attention steadily turned east and south. That is, as their longtime enemy, the Ottoman Turks, weakened and retreated, the Austrians pushed forward towards the east and the south, taking up the territory they've lost. It's going all the way back to the 16th century that the Austrians were nearly overrun by the Ottoman Turks. So they're doing what they can to take out their largest enemy. And so these empires want to grow and expand, and plus, especially at the expense of their enemies, they're pushing into these non-German territories. They're doing this for generations. So all their time, effort, and energy is in these areas that the Ottomans had abandoned or were being forced to abandon, instead of moving deeper into Germany like Prussia was doing. Well, by mid-century, it was clear that Austria was a weakening power. They did not get involved in the Crimean War, and that was a blow to their international reputation. Then you have the Austro-Prussian War of 1866. A quick war, Prussians plow into them, humiliating them. And this failure in war led to a lot of domestic problems at home. Now, the 1848 revolutions, where all these different groups were trying to pull Austria apart, form their own separate countries, that was only put down by force of the army in 1848, and with the Russians coming in as well. In 1866, the army's been defeated. Russians are far, far away. A lot of these groups are seeing their chance. Like I said, and they've been defeated politically, militarily in 1848, but the ideas did not die. The idea of nationalism, self-determination, did not die. So now they're trying again in 1866. So Austria realizes once and for all, they're going to have to deal with this problem. That they're a minority trying to control a very large group of people that do not want them there. So they reached out to the next largest group, ones really that Austria's future hinged on, the Hungarians. And they made a deal with them called Ausgleich. And what it does is it transforms the Austrian Empire, what they called a dual monarchy, becoming the nation of Austria-Hungary. Right, Germans make up a third, but Hungarians also make up about a third. And they've been pushing for independence for a long time, particularly through the efforts of Louis Constant. Well, Austrians make a deal with the Hungarians to basically, instead of giving them their independence, cutting them in on a piece of the pie. Dual monarchy. So basically, instead of giving them independence, basically making them partners in this. Basically giving them power to control all these other little groups like the Austrians are. What they do is, through this agreement, the Ausgleich, the Austrians and Hungarians would divide up control of the Austrian Empire. Austrians control one half, the Hungarians another half. This big, curvy little purple line down the middle of the country.
But they were in trouble, right? Is that what you were saying earlier? Who's in trouble as far as
the Germans are?
Right.
Yeah, the Germans are the Austrians.
Right.
They're wanting to preserve the empire. They're always restless minority groups that want to leave Austria, and so the Germans, as the Austrians, realize that the only way to keep the empire together is to bring in the next biggest group in to help them control all the rest of these groups.
Right. But they were hesitant about it.
Yeah.
Right.
They are. There is some hesitation about it. But here's how it would work: is Austria and Hungary, they each have their own separate constitution, their own two house legislatures, that also have controlling their own domestic affairs. Then these areas in their own little side, little purple line, they would be deciding how things will run. The Austrians on one side, the Hungarians on another. So they have their own capitals. So Austria would still be out of Vienna. Budapest, as it was called at that time. Combined city right on the Danube. That would be the capital for Hungary. Budapest. It's not native at that time. Not today. It's because basically you had to think about Budapest. Beautiful cities right on the Danube River, the longest river in Europe. And basically you had Buda on one side and Pest on the other side, connected by a long bridge. So as the city grew and grew in importance, it became one big city, Budapest. The thing is, though, the Austrian emperor would still be controlling foreign affairs and the military out of Vienna. Like I said, but the Austrian emperor would also be the king of Hungary plus about 50 other different titles. And that would be, of course, Francis Joseph I. From 1848 to 1960. Basically, he's satisfying one group of nationalists, but ignoring all the others. So Louis Constant, when he heard about this deal, he urged Hungarians, don't take the deal. Just go for independence. Don't take the deal. Because it meant one thing. The Hungarians would not be independent. They'd still be subject to Austrian Emperor, but plus, through this deal, they would now be the dominating group. They'd be the group now, controlling all these little groups wanting to be free. They'd be just like the Austrians. But the appeal of power was too much for too many Hungarian nationalists, and they went to the dual monarch. So now the Austrians and Hungarians, though together the majority, but they're still dominating all these little different groups. So Austria-Hungary has solved the problem temporarily, but they still have the basic problem of this different patchwork of nationalities not wanting to be unified into one country, especially at gunpoint. Now go to Russia. Their loss in the Crimean War proved that Russia was falling behind the rest of Europe. Now, Russia has always been kind of in a funny position in European affairs. They're kind of straddling the line between Asia and Europe, kind of the outskirts of Europe. Mostly kind of concerned about their own affairs. It's a little mysterious, always a little isolated. They're very powerful. They did a lot with what they had. But for the good bulk of the time, though, they're concentrating on internal security, expensive internal development, basically trying to control the population instead of trying to let them grow and develop ideas, technology, industry, and so forth. Well, Nicholas I had died in 1855. And so in comes Alexander II. And he tries to overhaul the Russian system. It is, again, part of this pattern you see in Russian politics this time period. You have this very reform-minded emperor replaced by a very repressive emperor. Reform and repression. Reform, repression. Forward one step, back two. Be like this just constantly. So the Russian people have a little bit of hope for a while, then have it stripped away from them again. The process is getting very frustrating. So Alexander is trying some reforms of the Russian system. In 1861, he realized that Russia was the only country in Europe that still practiced serfdom. A backwards, repressive, inefficient, medieval system that Russia needed to get rid of to advance into the 19th century with all the rest of Europe. So in 1861, Alexander II abolishes serfdom. It's a major advance for Russia and for civil liberties in Russia. Yeah, Alexander II. Yeah. So this meant for the peasants, for the average person in Russia, here in Alexander II, was peasants could now own property. They could marry as they chose, having had permission of the manorial lord. They could bring suits in law courts and so forth. They had certain legal rights. Because the rights were no longer depend on who they worked for. The rights would no longer depend on who they work for, but defined by law. Now, but here's the problem, though. They've been freed, but now what? How are they going to live? Said they're farmers, but where's the land? So the government tries to take care of this problem by providing lands for serfs by purchasing land from the manorial lords. Because they have all this land, a lot of it not using, so just buy it up and distribute it to the peasants. But there's two problems with that. The best lands, most productive lands, they are still controlled by the manorial lords. They didn't sell their good stuff. They sold the bad stuff, the scrub brush, rocks, and so forth, stuff that swampland nobody wanted.
Right.
And, well, the government paid all this money for this land. They decided, well, we're not just going to give this stuff away. The peasants are going to have to work for it, help pay off the bills for this land. So what they do is they force the peasants to accept these lands, to stay on the lands until the debt's paid off. Essentially, serfdom in a new form.
Right.
The generational obligation is still there. They just change the name on who they owe it to.
They're still doing that today.
Exactly.
Yeah, with farmers.
Okay.
So they made them stay where they were going to, that they had to work.
Yeah, had to work on these really bad lands that weren't productive. Of course, they had all sorts of things to take care of this. Now, the peasant population of Russia is growing very rapidly in the late 1800s. And so you end up having the increasing problem in Russia of food shortages. Because all the arable land, all the usable land is being controlled by these old manorial lords who are just hanging on to it, producing what they need to, but never enough to satisfy the hungry masses of Russia. People are starving. So it actually ended up leading to the fall of the Tsar in World War I. People were starving to death. So the peasants are expected to pay for their lands. So they form what's called a mir, which is basically a village commune. It's something, the word mir doesn't have an exact translation into English. 1980s, the Russians actually had a small space station in orbit. It wasn't meant to be permanent, but they went up there and conducted various experiments on village commune. And they called it mir, which basically meant village or community. And basically, the peasants on the lands, they'd have to pay their taxes back to the mir. And basically, they're all collectively responsible for repayment. They put all the money here to the mir, they send it back to the Tsar until everything's paid for. But again, the mir would not let the peasants leave their lands until they were paid for. Now, 1864, the Tsar introduces a system called the Zemstvos. Basically, a local assembly.
What if they didn't want the land?
They could go somewhere else, but that's basically all they know how to do. What else are you going to do in Russia?
They wanted to give them like another job, like they didn't do their job, they just out of work, or what's that?
That pretty much was works. That's how they took care of themselves. They might basically hire themselves out as migrant farm laborers, but it'd be easier just to be a farmer. Because they can't get a factory job in Russia, there are very few of them. So a lot of them end up leaving the United States.
So it's like, couldn't do that for whatever reason they would just leave the country or
Yeah, basically they decided to either stay on the lands where they're at or leave. That's it. Really not a lot of third options. No opportunities where they were at. But interesting thing here about the Zemstvos, the local assembly, is it's kind of like a county government is here in Arkansas, in the United States. Local assembly basically would help provide education, relief from famine, and road and bridge maintenance in their local area. And they could levy taxes for these services. Basically, in a way, the people could make some decisions about how their community was being run. Make sure that some certain basic services were being provided and how they were provided. It wasn't much, but it was a step forward. Legal reforms provided a regional system of local and provincial courts. The thing is, though, Alexander's stuck. You have the reformers who want more reform, saying this isn't enough, versus the boyars and the conservatives saying, no, this is too much, let's go back. So he's stuck. Can't do anything, can't move forward, can't move backward, so that's pretty much all he can do, basically. As important as these reforms were, it solved very important problems for Russia, but also created new problems. new problems that Alexander never dealt with. It's not satisfactory. In 1881, a group of radicals assassinated Alexander II. He was riding out in Moscow one day in his carriage. Had a couple, kind of a little team of carriages here. Somebody threw out a bomb underneath one of the carriages, exploding. Tsars rushed back to the Kremlin, Royal Palace, and just made sure he's safe. Then afterward, he just wanted to go out and make sure everybody's okay. Just go to the scene, because people have been killed. And he goes there, but a couple of the assassins are still lurking around. They threw a bomb at the emperor and killed him. Killed him then, the second time he came out. So his son Alexander III then becomes the Tsar. Just seeing his father murdered, being pushed by the boyars, Alexander resorts to a system of severe repression. As he undoing all the liberal reforms that his father put in place, restricting the local courts, increased censorship, monitoring of the people for the secret police, arrests of political dissidents.
So Alexander II was assassinated in
1881.
He was kind of paranoid.
Yeah. But that kind of position, yes, it's understandable. So it comes with the job. 1881. And Alexander III be ruling until 1894. Let's go back to Britain. Things are actually going very nicely for Britain. Latter part of the 19th century. Growing economy leading to stability in the country. Between 1850 and 1870, real wages were up 25%. Real wages, that's an economic term that means wages adjusted for inflation. And overall, the people are making more money. But there's still very deep poverty in the cities, very serious problems of poverty among factory workers. This is in Great Britain. Actually, the signs are all pointing up, but it's not coming along enough fast enough. But this whole period is generally called the Victorian Age. So you had the Romantic Age in the literary era, the late 1700s and early 1800s. So you can see a lot of the real liberal writers of the time period, the revolutionaries and so forth, the Romantics, but followed by the Victorians. Talking about the 1830s to the early 1900s. Next, the Romantic literature is very, paintings are very about seeing the beauty in the world, very flowing, very elegant. Victorian art, Victorian literature is a little more stilted, a little more formal. Next, you ever read things like Thomas Hardy and those guys? That was very, very intense literature, very hard to read sometimes. Just because of the style of the music.
The Victorian was what, 18?
Yeah, basically about the 1830s, early 1900s. And it's named after this woman, Queen Victoria. Now, essentially, she was queen pretty much by accident. She was very low on the list of a succession, but remember, George III died blind and insane in 1820. We said, he really kind of felt sorry for the guys. Complete breakdown. But his son, George IV, had come in as a regent in 1810. But had a very short reign, 1820 to 1830. But there were all sorts of accidents, diseases, that says claiming lives of princes and princesses here and there. So go to William the Fourth after that. Very, very short reign. Dies all of a sudden, and one morning Victoria's woken up and said, "You're the queen now."
What was the age back then of death? Like 40 or something?
I'd say, it kind of depends on where you're at, but in England, life expectancy is early 50s.
This is back in the 1800s?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You're not living very long these days. Except if you made it to your 50s, you had a good chance of making it to your 60s, but a lot of the illnesses and accidents between just
And usually
greatly reduce your
towns
chance of living very
usually
long.
start to live longer.
It's starting to.
What?
Advances in sanitation, increased food production,
Here.
advances in medicine, yeah.
So I wonder if humans could keep going,
hmm
live longer and longer.
Yeah,
like
I say, who knows how long it
150
goes.
or something like that.
Actually, one Baldus said that thinks the upper limit for the human design is 140, but people are barely getting past, probably just kind of getting past 100. The oldest man on Earth right now is 112 years old. He is a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah, I think I saw it.
There's a woman in Camden, just like last year, she was the oldest woman in the world, oldest person in the world. She was 116 when she died, just a couple weeks short of her 117th birthday. It's a fascinating
So do you
line.
think somebody could live 100?
Maybe a very long time for they can. A lot of advances in medical technology, probably a lot of tubes sticking out of them, but they can probably do it.
I wouldn't want to see nobody. Not like that, I'm just saying, that would be kind of, if you weren't.
Like I say, yeah, the question of quality of life is definitely an issue. But that's a discussion for the day. Well, it's Victoria comes up. Merry old Queen Victoria. She's the Queen, and she has the longest reign in English history, 1837 to 1901, 64 years. So right now, Queen Elizabeth II is gaining honor, may overtake her very soon. Queen Elizabeth II, her mother lived to be over 100, so she may be around for quite a while longer. But Victoria got a good long run, too. She's like 20 years old or something when she became queen, very young. And of course, she had the best doctors in England, so it's going to make sure she's taken care of. Plus a little luck.
Yeah, I've been reading for my research paper, and like Catherine the Great almost died of pneumonia, and then after that, she almost died from the treatment they were giving her.
Yeah.
Like every time she got depressed, they did the bleaching.
Like I said, medical technology is horribly primitive. It's
Yeah.
shocking by today's standards. Well, anyway, Queen Victoria, she was. This is a time period, kind of transition period in British politics, when the Queen is coming less and less. The monarch is becoming less and less of a power broker in British political affairs, moving from being determining who's prime minister, becoming more and more just a figurehead in politics. And so she wasn't very outspoken on a lot of issues, but she became a symbol of basically all the things that were supposed to be good about England. Grace, dignity, honor, like I say, always pushing through and just basically doing the job you need to do to get it done. The British idea, keep a stiff upper lip and just carry on, that's how do you really start gaining a lot of popularity in Victoria. And because of that, the Victorian age is very repressive in a lot of ways. It's very strict morality. You have this idea of the separate spheres of men's work versus women's work is very, very strictly enforced at this time. There's certain things that men did, certain things that women did, that the two must not mix. That's just not proper. Being proper, that's what the Victorians are about. Being very stuffy. Like I say, and of course, women wear these floor-length dresses, not supposed to let anything show from neck down. It's just, it's have to be improper.
Right.
Scandalous.
So that's
But I
why.
can't understand what the underwear that they wore. It was like a onesie.
pretty much they didn't have a lot of advances in underwear and things like that.
Hey.
Basically, the very basics. But you never discussed that in public. Victorian idea? No. In fact, that's where tablecloths really kind of came in vogue, because they're supposed to cover the entire table, including the table legs, because legs, those are
Yeah.
suggestive. I kid you not.
But that's where we get all of that here, because all that flow from there to here
Yeah.
into America.
So it wasn't that long
Right.
ago. American settlers are coming out, kind of establishing communities in the West. That's
Correct.
is the styles they're bringing with them, the ideas they're bringing with them.
Right.
That's the way, certain way things are done, certain way things are proper.
So
You just don't discuss it in public.
From
A lot of our modern etiquette comes from the Victorian age.
But even though they were escaping from the British or the ordeals and customs, or at least their practices from over there, they still brought a lot of it here because
Yeah.
that's what they knew.
Exactly, that's what they
Right. So that's what they.
And of course, you're moving from lower class, working class, and middle class, and upper class. You want to look the part. You want to look stylish, and have certain etiquette, certain way things are done. Because these are the people who have 3 forks with every meal, and
Yeah.
they said,
Have a knife full of butter.
writing thank you notes. That was a big thing started by the Victorians. It's still something you're supposed to do today, but
Style
yes.
ever come back?
Yeah. Except certain elements, certain styles is very dignified, very stylish. Just little gestures were important.
The Lord has a calm for it.
Yeah. Victoria with her husband, Prince Albert, again, Parliament changed the rules of the monarchy. The husband did not automatically become king. He was Prince Consort. They had 9 children together. Said political partners. They deeply loved each other. But early 1860s, Albert got sick and died. Since then, kind of tradition that you don't name a King Albert. But like I said, she wore black in mourning for the rest of her life.
Really?
And she just never got over it.
That was the one true love.
Yeah. Like I said, there were stories she had a couple of boyfriends here and there, but she never got married.
Never.
Never could go fast.
Yeah, some people like that. That's it. But I tell you one story that really kind of exemplifies, kind of embodies the times and the spirit of the Victorian age. Victoria has 9 children. And her youngest daughter's getting married one day. It's her wedding night, first time as a married couple and all that. And she asked her mother, what should she expect as a married woman on her wedding night? What should she do? So she'd never done anything like that before. Victoria just calmly gives her some advice, pets her hand, says, just lie back and think of England.
Really?
I kid you not. Lie back and think of England.
You get this stuff. What do
You make
read?
that up.
I did not make that up.
Give us the website.
Yeah, lie back and think of England.
She had 37 grandkids.
She thought of England.
A lot of thinking of England going on. But these 37 grandkids, they ended up being princes and princesses all over Europe. One of them was the wife, one of them ended up becoming the Tsar of Russia, another becoming the Kaiser of Germany, and the third ended up becoming King of England. Basically, when World War I starts, the heads of Europe, the monarchs of different powers, those basically are all her grandkids.
Are they all kin to the royal family now? Leanne?
I say royal family, they're directly descended from Victoria.
Maybe like their great grandmother?
Yeah, let's see. Elizabeth II, say her father was George VI, his father George V, Edward, son, Victoria. So that would be her.
Great grand.
great-great-grandmother is Queen Victoria. Queen Elizabeth. Yes, it goes like this. It's the 7th, 1901 to 1910.
So basically, they just keep it in the family.
Pretty much. That's it. Like I said, everyone's had a lot of kids or enough kids to survive, so the royal families kept going. The hereditary monarchy going into...
But by this time, they're not marrying in the family anymore.
No, so they're marrying outside the family. At least, if they may be marrying royalty or upper classes of Britain, but basically, but they're not marrying their cousins.
Did they become a law to them, or did they just
I-
stop?
I think they just stopped, but I think it is a law in England. You can't marry your cousins. In fact, I'm not sure if it's still on the books or not, but actually it's been a law for a long time that in Louisiana, before you could get married, you had to swear that to your knowledge you were not marrying your first cousin.
Oh, wow.
Good to you know. That is possible.
That is gross.
But it's possible. You don't know your other family members.
Well, Edward VIII and George VI were brothers. We'll get to that story later on. It's a very sordid tale there. And when she passes on or abdicates,
And she's
Prince
still,
Charles becomes Charles III. Yeah.
Elizabeth's still alive, right?
Elizabeth II is alive and kicking. And it's this little old lady with her little hat, her little pantsuit, carrying her purse everywhere, just waving crowds, being British. Thinking of England. Her husband's got in a lot of trouble because we'll say he doesn't keep his affections at home.
Oh. So she's married.
Yeah, Elizabeth is married, but it's like Victoria. She was literally in line to the throne. Her husband did not automatically become king. Her Prince Philip is Prince Consort.
Okay. Having extramarital.
No. Exactly.
And now the law in England is that the firstborn son, the oldest surviving son, becoming king. It's basically whoever's their first daughter or son, get queen or king. Yeah.
But now the queen, she doesn't really do all that much. Does she? It's kind of like
She queens.
It's
Sweeps.
not as much as they used to, though.
No, it's basically a ceremonial rule.
Yeah.
It's basically just we have the Statue of Liberty here. They have the monarchy there. It's a symbol, supposed to be a symbol of all things that are good about England. It's figurehead. Somebody just waves the crowd, attends the opening shopping centers, things like that.
They probably don't even work. Prince William, they probably don't even really work, do they? They probably just...
They don't have to, but they do some things. They have charities and organizations they work for. Charles and William both were in the military. They didn't have to, but they did. And so, but basically, they had enough money. They don't have to work the rest of their life. They would want to.
I talked to a few British folks, and they say that the main reason why they still have the monarchy is because it brings in a lot of revenue, tourist revenue.
There's that too. Tourism revenue does pay for itself. But there have been a lot of people for years going back and forth saying maybe we should just get rid of the monarchy. In fact, even in Victoria's time, they had people saying, let's just get rid of it, so we don't need it. But just out of habit, they keep it around.
People like watching royal weddings.
Yeah, they like royal weddings. They like the royal drama. They like they like having it around. They're just used to it.
So Elizabeth reigns like one more year. She's going to exceed Victoria.
Pretty much.
She
She can do it, too.
She was down there. This is second.
Next, her sons will become Charles III, and
Prince Charles.
That's the one died in the...
and then
Oh,
William's mother died in a car crash.
okay, I got you.
His first wife, Charles, had already divorced.
Okay.
which in previous years would have been a huge scandal, might have disqualified them from the monarchy, but the 1980s, 1990s, that no one really cared much anymore.
The scandal.
Yeah, it's a scandal of getting divorced.
Oh.
Actually, if it was at this time, actually, he would have been able to compete. Because it happened in the 1990s, nobody cared anymore. Actually, that's part of the issue around this guy right here.
Okay. And it was a whip.
8.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with learning.
Oh, yeah. But what's happening in Parliament, meanwhile? You have workers are agitating for more rights, political rights, and rights in the workplace. Unions becoming more powerful, more prominent. So under pressure in 1867, Britain passes the Reform Act in 1867. Basically including many more male urban workers are given the right to vote. It basically doubles the number of people who are eligible to vote from about 1 million up to 2 million. Big advance, but the Tories, that is the Conservative Party, they decided to go along with this. Particularly their Prime Minister was a novelist named Benjamin Disraeli. Decides they're going to take this bet because they're betting that the lower classes had a lot of pride in being British, pride in the monarchy, pride in being subject to the British Empire. There'd be a lot of these new voters who wanted to vote for the Conservatives. Well, there were a few, but basically, mostly the interest of the workers at that time was economic issues, getting ahead above water. So what ends up happening is, instead of a Conservative victory in the 1868 elections for Britain, a Liberal landslide. But the late 1870s and 1880s, though, British politics is in a lot of flux, going heatedly between the conservative governor Disraeli to a Liberal governor William Gladstone. Spelled Gladstone, so not pronounced Gladstone. Basically, each of these men is Prime Minister 4 times.
You said each were Prime Minister?
4 times, yes. Each throwing the next other one out of office time after time after time. Well, meanwhile, in America, we've got the Civil War. 1861 to 1865. The South had built a economic and social system based on enslaving African Americans. So millions of people of African descent being held in bondage, in slavery, and the nation had been going in 2 separate directions over this. There's the South doubling down and insisting on a racial caste system. There's a system of freedom based only for whites. And the North, rapidly industrializing, rapidly advancing, insisting on an economic social system based on free soil, free labor, and free men. There's rights for labor, no slavery, and opening up the federal lands open to settlement out west. So it was a breaking point. The South was convinced the North was out to get them in order to preserve slavery, and they said this openly in their statutes of secession. It was over slavery. They were pulling out. Abraham Lincoln was president and decided that, oh no, y'all aren't going anywhere. Lincoln once said about the idea of secession that the idea of secession turns this marriage of the states into a kind of a free love society. That federal law must be enforced. Basically, he's telling his army units not to abandon their positions. You stay where you're at. And so the South starts the Civil War by firing on federal troops.
And law.
Yeah. After 4 long, horrible years. 700,000 dead. But basically what happens in the process is slavery is eliminated in the United States. 1863, Lincoln issues what came to call the Emancipation Proclamation. Executive order claiming that in all areas still held under Confederate control, the slaves were considered free from that point forward. Basically trying to break the economy and social structure of the South once and for all. If they continue to resist the federal government, they're going to break their will to fight. As a result, about a quarter of all slaves remaining ended up being freed under the terms of the Emancipation Proclamation. In 1865, any remaining slave, almost all the states have abandoned slavery at this point, all remaining slaves are freed under the 13th Amendment. And afterward, as a result, the United States, because they put all this money and effort into winning the war and basically producing all these weapons at home, those industries continued to thrive and expand. So in the 1870s and 1880s, the United States was rapidly becoming one of the most important manufacturing powers in the world. Okay, so we had the resources scattered all over a big country. We had factories booming, converting from wartime to civilian production and expanding beyond there. And they had a worldwide market waiting. But because of what's happening here with the United States, Canada was very worried. During the war, the United States and Britain almost went to war with each other. Britain is considering backing the South not because they backed slavery. Slavery was banned in the British Empire, but basically they want to see the biggest competitor, the United States, split up, cut them off at the knees. But basically, Secretary of State William Henry Seward told Britain, kept threatening, said, "You interfere in this, you're going to war with the United States." A couple occasions very nearly did. Which, of course, worried Canada because they were the nearest British territory to the United States. And so that encouraged this man here, John Macdonald, who was the premier, basically the governor of the province of Lower Canada, which is called today Ontario, basically tell the British to preserve Canada, keep the United States from bothering Canada. Canada needed Dominion status. Pushed for it, and even as a conservative, Macdonald's pushing for this, convincing conservative parliament to agree with the idea of Canadian Dominion. Basically, it's autonomy for Canada. Essentially, Canada is able to run its own domestic affairs, but basically military policy, foreign policy, it's still basically controlled by England.
So is that why the slaves reigned in Canada?
Yeah, because slavery is illegal in Canada and throughout the British Empire.
Okay.
But after, it goes back to difficult complicated American history, basically. Fugitive Slave Act 1850, even in free states, slaves weren't safe anymore after 1850, so a lot of them kept the Underground Railroad expanded from Ohio into Canada. So John Macdonald becomes the first Prime Minister of Canada. Canada's still very close to Britain today. In fact, Queen Elizabeth's on all the money and have a lot of laws in common with England, but essentially Canada gains its independence because of the American Civil War. Not because of anything the United States did, but because of what it might do if it was ever upset with England in the future. In 1812, the United States and Britain fought a long war with each other, and basically the main focus of that battle was British territory in Canada. And the Canadians didn't want that happening again. All right, any questions? Well, that takes care of it. Keep your books, chapters 23 and 24 for next time. Nothing else. See y'all later. Have a good day.